Hello and welcome to episode 234 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Of course, I am your host, Rick Doherty. On today's show, we're going to tackle a serious topic. Disney fandom is tied up a lot in online culture and social media culture, and it can lead to a lot of negative things. Over the past decade, we've seen many instances of, especially men taking advantage of women. It will blow up every once in a while with huge stories that have even garnered national attention. My good friend Gillian has worked with a lot of women who have faced these types of issues online, specifically in the Disney community. She's uniquely qualified to talk about how bad actors use the platform to take advantage of their status. There is another attempt at a Disney dating site, for example. This could be a great thing, or it could be a really, really bad thing. Don't get me wrong, the Disney community is one of the best places to meet new people. I've met some of my favorite people in the world through this community. The Disney theme parks are some of the safest places in the world to meet new people. There's security everywhere. There are cameras everywhere. If you start to feel uncomfortable, you can literally wait until he turns around to look at something and then just disappear into the crowd. The first time I met Gillian in the parks and the first time I met my co-host Maz in the parks, they were both with their mothers. Like there are ways to make sure that you are safe. The first time I've met a lot of people, they are in big groups. I know that I'm a big guy and I can be intimidating. There are plenty of ways to make sure everyone feels comfortable entering these situations. My life has been made so much better by reaching out to dozens of people on Twitter, but I've seen people's lives be ruined by it as well. A lot of this conversation may seem vague. Our goal was not to relitigate things that have happened in the past. That's finished. The real purpose is to highlight a problem in the community that sometimes goes unmentioned. Sunlight is the best disinfectant. The entire purpose of this podcast has been to promote inclusion in the Disney community and then also the travel community in general. Well, one of the areas that people prevent inclusion is to make women, people of color, disabled people, members of the LGBTQ plus community, and other marginalized groups feel uncomfortable. It is harder to be in an online community if you aren't a straight, cisgendered, neurotypical, able-bodied white Protestant man. As long as I have this channel and this podcast, I will be making sure that we're making room for people. Let's get started. Thanks for being here, Gillian.
Thank you for having me.
So we're going to get into what is, well, let's face it, a serious topic today. And I think it's actually one that, as we have looked at the 6 years, 7 years that we've known each other, I think is a really big problem that doesn't get addressed a lot in the Disney community. And that is that there are, let's just face it, a lot of creeps out there.
Yep.
And specifically, when we started interacting on Diz Twitter in 2019, when we started to develop our friendship, there was a lot of stuff going on at that time. And even though, it goes into the background after a while and you don't think about it for a few months, but then stories always continue to pop up every few months that remind people that this isn't the safest community. And it's not to say that it's not safe at all and it's dangerous, but that there are things that you can do to try to protect yourself in this community.
Yes.
So I think the first thing that we're going to have to talk about when diving into this subject is influencer culture, because it's not just the Disney community. These are problems that happen in all fan bases. Anytime that you start to create hierarchies, you start to create power dynamics, and that can lead to people abusing that for their own gains. And a lot of that has to do with influencer culture. So why don't you talk about that just a little bit here?
I couldn't have put it more perfectly than you just started out. A lot of people, a lot of influencers even want to say that, the numbers don't mean anything and follower count is BS, and you shouldn't pay attention to that, and it doesn't matter. In like, just like you said, with power dynamics, yes, things like a follower count does matter. It does change things. A lot of people, and I guess this would also tie into parasocial relationships, they see someone with a huge follower count, and they automatically thinks that this person is entitled to a certain amount of celebrity or respect in a space. And yes, unfortunately there are, I want to say a select few, but I guess by now we know it's more than a few of people who use that to very sinister purposes on their part, to take advantage of members of the opposite sex and whatnot. And it's something that you do have to have some autonomy yourself and decide, and you have to think in that aspect. This person, if they're doing something harmful to me or making me uncomfortable in any way, I should not be afraid of that person because they have a huge follower account. You shouldn't let anyone hold anything over you that makes you feel uncomfortable or makes you feel unsafe or that is directly harmful to you, because of dynamics like that. It's wrong, and you have every right to stand up and not take it.
So we're coming at this, and we're a little older than a lot of the other people in the Disney community, in the Disney fan community. Not that we're a lot older, but a lot of this has to do with people who are maybe a generation younger than us. And when I was growing up, like, I started my career in broadcasting. I was on a radio station, and we had people on the radio station who took advantage of their status for being, a pseudo celebrity, being on the radio, to take advantage of people, to take advantage of women, to take advantage of girls. And the problem that we have now with influencer culture, or one of them, is when I was on the radio, I was being platformed by somebody. The mic belonged to somebody else, right? So if I acted inappropriately, I wasn't just facing the possibility of legal ramifications, but I faced the possibility of my boss firing me, or it looking bad at work that
You
I
lose your
was
platform.
trying to take advantage of this, right? Or you just lose your platform.
You get it taken away from you. You don't get it back.
What has happened with influencer culture, and I'm not saying that in every situation this is a bad thing either. It does allow people to get past the gatekeepers because they can get directly to an audience. But one of the problems with influencer culture is that you look at somebody on YouTube, or you look at somebody on TikTok, and anybody can get on those sites. So there isn't a gatekeeper, there isn't a corporation behind those people saying, if this person acts out of line, that's going to look bad on us.
Yeah, there's no real vetting system, like it's a job, like you said, like back then. Like the game has changed now. Everybody has the internet. Everybody has a public, persona online. But, as we keep finding out, behind the keyboard, it's a completely different thing.
And people can still do things that make them look like they are part of some sort of apparatus. So they might have merchandise, they might have a slick and professional looking YouTube channel. They might look like the exact same thing that was happening 15, 20 years earlier, but they don't have anybody. They're the top of their pyramid, which means that anything happens in their community, they are the top of that pyramid. And that can lead to some very, very dangerous things. This is not to say that it's even the majority of people, but everybody gets into that kind of stuff for a reason. And you just have to be careful. And they'll tell stories about rock stars in the 70s and 80s and Led Zeppelin and Van Halen, and they didn't have the right to do it either. But there were more chances that they would face consequences than people now who try to take that status and hold it over people. So, what are some things that you can do just to sort of check that you're being safe in these online communities?
Even just for professionalism alone, most of us are employed and don't want anything to get out there that would mess with our employment, right? Um, you don't want to be given everybody every personal detail of your life at all times. It's stranger danger. It still applies. Like you don't want to just give any stranger on the internet, because they are strangers. I don't care how long you talk to them on a digital platform. They're still strangers that do not know you. You don't want to be giving out, doxing yourself, so to speak, giving very private personal information about where you live, where you work, what you do. On a daily basis, your routines, just other, not just financial information. But I know we're in a new age of loneliness and reaching out to people, and you think that this might be the way to get friends online, but you got to know when to share and when not to share identifiable personal information about yourself, because other people can use that to harm you.
And I think that a lot of times people will talk about triangulation as like an attack mode, but I
Yes.
think you can do triangulation as a defense, as a way to fortify yourself. Like, if you are trying to make friends in a community, and that's basically the purpose of social media, is to try to cultivate relationships within a community, find people who are outside of your little circle where you live who have the same interests as you.
Mm-hmm.
If you're trying to do that, start small and actually get into communities where maybe a couple people, so that you don't have a really strong relationship right away with a bunch of people or even one or two people. You make sure, like, for example, when we started talking on Twitter,
Mm-hmm.
you knew other people from the Diz Twitter community who were communicating with me as well. So you knew that there was a chance that, hey, maybe I'll just keep it in mind in case he does something that strikes me as weird. I can go to this person over here and say, hey, has he ever done anything to you? Or is this just me reading the room wrong, right? Like, if you know other people who know that person, you can have conversations and make sure that you're okay. You also have a better chance of being tipped off if there is somebody trying to do something nefarious. You're maybe spread a little more thin than you are having real intense relationships right away. Because if you know a lot of people, you might tend to hear some things come back. And then as you have solidified those relationships a little more, then they move from parasocial to the real world in a way that is much more organic and more deliberate. By the time that we actually hung out a lot, we had probably known each other for 2 years online.
Mm-hmm.
And rushing into the things is where you can get those problems. Would you say that's probably an accurate statement?
Yeah, again, and especially probably with younger people, or if we could get into psychology of self-esteem all day. But I understand how it's easy and it seems more tangible, if you're lonely, to reach out to just anybody and, see if someone, like, hit you back, and then you think you've made a connection. But it's vetting, right? Like I said before, it's just another form of vetting. Everything that you were just talking about, like, oh, well, this person knows him, and I know me and you have had this discussion a million times. You know this guy? You know this girl? Do you know this person? And quotations around no, but the word no, but that's what it is. It's just another form of vetting. Like, am I saying spread gossip and like send out a mass message to 80 people to see if they know somebody? No, but that's how it is. There's everything that you just said, without me having to reiterate word for word. um that's how it goes on online and online spaces. It's what you have to do to really, I mean, honestly, another form to protect yourself.
And that is a great point, that it's not about going and gossiping and creating, little cliques online. I'm saying more that it's just a matter of making sure that you know people. The transition from a parasocial relationship to a real relationship will never happen in 3 days.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a long time. And if you are communicating with a lot of people in the community, that's better, because it's one of those situations where if you're communicating at a superficial level with a lot of people, you will eventually start to form deeper relationships as those connections happen. But if you're trying to force it because so and so has 20,000 followers on Twitter or has 100,000 subscribers on YouTube, first of all, screw that guy. He sounds like he's like, no, I'm jealous of that guy. You don't want that guy. The first thought would be, oh, this Rick guy, he's got a lot of followers. He's got a podcast. He's married. He's safe. Now, I am safe, but that none of those things are the reason I am safe, right?
Yes, exactly.
Like, we have found that a lot, and a lot is, I'm saying, the majority of times when people get caught being a creep in these situations and in these spaces, we're talking about somebody who might be married. And we're talking about somebody who might not be held accountable by their spouse, or their spouse is part of the situation. And the normal traditional things that would make you feel safer, a predator knows those things. So they're going to try to say, hey, I'm married, I'm this, I'm that. Like, you don't have to worry about me. But they will continue to try to test that limit of what makes you feel comfortable. And it's just a thing that is unfortunate about social media because, like you did say, a lot of us are lonely right now. And it would be so easy, especially I'm autistic, and it's easy for me to develop a closer relationship with people earlier than other people do that. Like, I'll feel that connection earlier because of various different reasons we don't have time to get into now. But it's tempting to want to do those things, but just remember that the friendships that you want are the ones that are going to be around 7, 10, 15 years later. So if it takes 2 years to find that friendship, that's worth it if you know it's going to last and it's not going to lead to something problematic.
Yeah, and of course the usual things, when we used to make friends before the internet. Do you have anything in common? Are you, do you have things to talk about? Do you have the same viewpoints in life? And I'm not saying that has to be, opposites attract. That's a thing too. But do you have these conversations? Are you able to have difficult conversations with these people? Not the unsafe conversations that make you feel uncomfortable in a bad way. I mean, just if you have a disagreement about something, are you able to talk about that? Like, the usual stuff that it takes to build any relationship, a friendship. Like, to your point earlier, about people's relationship statuses, and then you would think this would never happen because of that. Well, what's that? That's grooming, right? That's the epitome of grooming, is that most of these people, they do use the fact that they're in a certain relationship status or not, but they use all these positive points about their life as a shield. And you would never think this about so and so because of A, B, and C, but in reality they're using that to groom or to hurt people by pushing boundaries. And what you said, testing boundaries, testing limits to see what they can get away with. It's the epitome of grooming. To develop a real relationship with someone who's not a creep, you would have to really get to know them in all those ways that we just talked about.
And one of them might be as simple as saying, like, when you talked about uncomfortable conversations, it's not about talking about things that are inappropriate, but
Mm-hmm.
maybe just saying, like, hey, could you at me on Twitter instead of DMing me?
Mm-hmm.
Like, that was one of the things that I tried at the beginning when I was like, boy, I don't want to creep somebody out because, here I am, a middle aged man who's in Diz Twitter, and I'm trying to think of ways to, signify that I'm safe. Well, one of the things is you just can't do that. So
Mm-hmm.
you just have to let time show. If you're not a creep, you just gotta let that show in the same way that it would show if you were a creep. You got to give it time.
Like, but I mean, most of all, be yourself, right? Because we know that the creeps out there are acting and they're putting on a facade and everything, but you don't have to tell the world, I'm safe, I'm a good guy. That usually denotes, like, methinks he doth protest too much. Like that usually, why do you keep saying that? Like, why
Right.
are you trying to convince me? Like, you don't any normal person doesn't need to do that.
But I do think that some simple things, like if somebody is adding you instead of DMing you, like, I do think that is a big thing. And I think that's something that more people should try because the other people can still see that.
Yes, that's a very good point.
So you
And
are trying to say, like, hey, I recognize that other people might see this conversation, And that is by definition safer than
Mhm.
one that goes into the DM.
And then what else? What are we're asking for consent? Can I DM you? Or, you know, can we talk about something else? Or like it all starts with consent. You have to make sure that everything going on is cool between both parties at all times.
Absolutely 100%. And I think that this gets back into when you start talking about some of the bigger accounts and some of the bigger presences, because that is where you'll notice it happening more. That's not to say that people with small accounts are all good people, because you're going to have creeps with small accounts too.
Yeah.
The problem with the big accounts is if you enter a community, and we're talking about Disney right now, but this happens in every fan base with every different community. When you enter, you'll notice the bigwigs right away. And there's a tendency to say, hey, I want to know that person. I want to
Mm-hmm.
know that, like, that's the person who brought me. Like, I was watching their vlogs, and that's why I started a Diz Twitter account. I want to be friends with that person.
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes what you got to do is you just got to interact with people and let the ones who are more like you gravitate towards you instead of going after certain people. Because, like you said, everybody who is doing any sort of social media presence, but really, once you're talking about influencers who are using their platform to, you know, try to get media credentials or trying to get, these are people who are at a level where they're not going to be interacting with people who have 15 followers unless they want something from them. And that's not saying that you're less than or anything like that. It's just saying that you're probably not going to be interacting with those bigger accounts right away when you join a new community. You're going to be dealing with smaller accounts because that's where you should be. You should be growing in a community with people who are also in the community for about the same amount of time that you've been there, or put the same amount of time in it as you put. And eventually you might start interacting with those people. But if they're getting media credentials, if they're getting the silver play button from YouTube,
Mm-hmm.
they are putting on a persona. Doesn't mean they're a bad person, doesn't mean that the persona that they're putting on to get the play button on YouTube is hiding a predator. It's just saying that they're a different person. So you might think, wow, that person seems like somebody I really want to hang with. And you just might not like them when you meet them. That happens a ton.
Yeah, it does. They're running a business. That's they're not in it for the same reasons that we are when we start out, or the smaller accounts that aren't looking to become influencers. So they're in it for different. They're just in it for different reasons. Some people use that for good. Some people use that for bad. Just like anything in the world.
And I think that is a really good point, that they're doing it for something else. Like, if you're entering and you've got an account and you've got 200 followers and you're just trying to, maybe you're local and you want to meet people in the parks, or maybe you are not local and you just want to feel a part of this community all the time when you're not on vacation. That's fine, but that's not why those people are doing it. Those people are doing it as a job.
Exactly.
If you're talking to other people who are in it for the same reasons, that's how you're going to actually get into the community, which is probably a better use of your time anyway, but it also probably keeps you safe from some of these people who are trying to use bigger platforms to their advantage.
It's you know, you want to talk about predators and victims, and unfortunately, you know, it's power in numbers, right? We never find out about these people until someone comes forward. But again, you can't lay that at a victim's feet. You know, if they want to come forward, if they want to speak out, you can talk to them behind the scenes, encourage them, care for them the best way that you can. Um, but you know, we can't force people to name names. We can't, you know, people have to be willing to come out and tell their stories, and that's how we find out about these people.
Nobody has to come out, nobody has to tell any story that's uncomfortable for them. But for every person who has, and we've heard about the people who have creeped on others in the community, I have to say, like, thank you for doing that. Thank you for coming out and saying what happened to you. And I just think as we get ready to wrap up this episode, I kind of want to go back to the very first thing that we discussed, and that is that we're living in an age where credentials are different. I
Mm-hmm.
mean, we have a president right now who is giving YouTubers access to the
The White
press
House
room
press. Yeah.
and then not giving it to ABC, NBC. Like, that's not normal. And there's just a difference between when you used to see somebody on television 20 years ago and when you see them on YouTube now. They haven't been vetted as many times. And that's not saying that they are bad people. It's just saying that it doesn't say the same thing that somebody is in one of these spaces. And just because they're getting media credentials from Disney, you might think, well, Disney is obviously endorsing those people, but that's not really what Disney is doing. Disney is just trying to get somebody with the most followers to show a picture of that new cupcake.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't really care about the personality of the person. Now, when that person gets caught, then yes, they do.
Yeah, exactly. And that's always the rub, isn't it? But yeah, but everyone's selling something. And that's always going to be the bottom line.
But if we can take one positive out of this before we go, there are creeps in absolutely every single solitary fandom.
Mm-hmm.
And if you are trying to reach out and you're trying to make friends in a new way, it's not always going to be easy. And sometimes there are going to be bumps in the road. But I'm really impressed that even in a world with all of these negatives, that you're still trying to get out there and interact and trying to make friends, because that's important too. Like, we can have this whole conversation for a half hour about how many creeps there are out there, but that doesn't mean that I don't think people should be trying to make friends and trying to make connections, because I absolutely think that one of the best things you can do is try to make sure that you're touching base with other people on a regular basis.
The good absolutely outweighs the bad. I am more thankful and more blessed with the friendships I have made from this community, from that nightmare of a platform, Twitter, than ever. Um, absolutely keep trying, but you just have to keep this stuff in the back of your mind. And once again, you just go with your gut. If it feels wrong, if something's off, you know, don't sit there and take it.
Absolutely. Gillian, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you very much.
This has been episode 234 of Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. If you aren't subscribed to the YouTube channel, please take the 30 seconds to subscribe. It is 100% free. I know Gillian tends to get some new people to listen when she's on the show. Well, a good way to keep getting her on the show is to have new subscribers join every time she's here. Next Thursday, my co-host Sarah Says will be back on the show as we revisit the 35th anniversary of the movie Dick Tracy. Maz and I talked about it earlier, but that's when I found out that it is one of Sarah's 5 favorite movies of all time. Well, we have to learn more about that. That will be next week on Tall Guy Talks Travel with Rick Doherty. Until then, have a great week.